Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by SJ&L General Contractors. SJ&L General Contractors is licensed in both Alabama and Tennessee. This family-owned business provides mass grading, storm drainage, sewer and concrete improvement, asphalt paving, erosion control, demolition, and heavy hauling. If you're in need of any of these services, you can contact them at 931-433-4660. That is 931-433-4660. If you'd like to be employed by this family-owned company, 3 W's and a dot, sjnl.com, www.sjnl.com. They call it a pamper pole, and the first one I ever saw was at Berry College. They said it was called a pamper pole because some people needed Pampers, that's a brand of diapers, after being on the thing. What the thing is a Class 2 utility pole, and they are utility poles, not telephone poles. When the power goes out, you don't call the phone company, you call the utility company. And there's this pole, and it's got a ladder against it, and then above the ladder are a series of staples, these really huge 5/8 inch staples hammered into it, and they use them as rungs to climb. Now, if you're climbing one of these things, you're obviously in a harness, and you're attached to a safety rope that goes through a mechanism that's suspended from a cable that's stretched between two trees so that you have the ability to be caught if you fall. Well, you climb this thing, and when you climb it, your right foot is on the last staple and your left foot comes up on top of the pole, and there's probably an 18 to 24 inch difference there, and you've got to do this one-legged squat. And there's nothing to hang on to. There's no guardrail there. You make this commitment move to do this Karate Kid type thing and stand up and put both feet on top of a pole. A Class 2 utility pole is 8 inches across the top. And you stand up and you balance yourself. And once you've done that, you've actually done what's important. Jumping off the pamper pole is not a big deal. Once you've stood up on the thing, jumping off is almost inconsequential. Most people could just stand up on the thing, get their balance, and go, okay, I've stood on it. And then you could just fall forward or fall backwards and swing away. So to entice people to go ahead and take a leap of faith, or we used to call ours the quantum leap instead of a pamper pole, Berry College had installed a trapeze bar. And this looks to me like it's, 2.5 miles away and 8 feet high. It's really about the same height as your head and one good giant broad jump from the base of the pole out. So it's not, but when you're in the air and there's exposure and there's nothing around you and you're looking at this little bar, it looks like it's forever away. And so you look down at the person who's holding your safety line, and the safety line goes through something that's anchored to the ground. It's usually a just right descender, which is another utility pole that's cut off, and the rope is threaded through a series of holes that have been bored in, and it weaves its way through, and there's enough friction there to stop a truck. You can thread the rope through 3 eye bolts, 5/8 inch eye bolts that are arranged in like a triangle pattern. It creates an M belay with the rope. But anyway, you look at the person and you say, spotters ready. They say spotters are ready. You say, I'm jumping on 3. They say jump on 3. You count them down 1, 2, 3, and then you jump. And I'd like to add that for Daryl Pickles' benefit. It's 1, 2, 3, and then you jump. It's not 1, 2, jump. It's not 1, 2. It's 1, 2, 3, and then anyway, they jump, and the person with the rope catches them. The trees or the other poles or whatever it is that's suspending your safety line flex. There's no jar. It's kind of a soft deceleration, and then you lower to the ground if you didn't catch the trapeze bar. I'm about 75% on catching trapeze bars at Berry College. My proudest moment on a pamper pole is to start on the ground and be blindfolded, go to the top, get your balance on top of the thing, and then jump off blindfolded and grab the trapeze bar. The one we built on Kill Mountain, and that was my favorite pamper pole. We call it the Quantum Leap. We had a class 2 pole there. We had 35 feet sticking out of the ground. And you get on top of that thing, and it was unbelievable. My friend Scott Widener calls it that blank pole, not the pamper pole, not the Quantum Leap pole. He just calls it the bleep bleep pole. And we had a volleyball. Actually, it was a tether ball suspended out there because we used to do a lot of work with volleyball teams. And so the kids could jump off the pole and smack this ball, which is really cool. Well, when we built the course at Wellstone, we hung a bell, a little dome-shaped bell off of a short cable, and the guy that helped me design this said, now you just get a dowel rod and your people climb up on the pole and they jump off and ring the bell with this little stick. Well, that was unacceptable. I bought like a 24-inch polypropylene. I always call it Kydex. It's really not Kydex, but a little polypropylene cold steel sword. And so you had this little ninja sword, and you put it in your harness, and you climb the pole, and you get your balance. And then when you jumped off, you rung the bell with this little sword. A kid named Ryan Smallwood jumped off that pole blindfolded and rung the bell 4 times. Ding, 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 before he lost his elevation. That was the standing record when we closed the course at Wellstone. My grandson was at the house the other day, and they like to play in my garage. My garage has a climbing wall, a wrestling mat, and in the middle of the wrestling mat, you can hang a punching bag. And they like for me to hang this little 40-pound punching bag low to the ground, almost so low that they have to lay flat and to let it swing over them. And we'll push the bag, and they'll dodge it, and they'll kick it, and they'll fight it. And Gunner loves to fight stuff. I made him these little people out of a retired mattress. Jackie was getting rid of a mattress, and I cut these little silhouette people out. They're about 8 inches thick, and they stand up, and I just thought it'd be fun to have something to play with. And so they come in to visit us, and the 2 little mattress people are standing there. Rowan, the little girl, immediately hugs hers, and Gunner drop kicks his and starts pounding it. So he loves to fight. Well, I have a couple of swords in my garage. Now, why do I have swords? There's really not a good reason for one of the swords. It's a decorative sword, and it's probably made out of 440 stainless. It's cheap. I bought it at a pawn shop the weekend Tony Allen got married. We were up in Tennessee for his wedding, and after the rehearsal, we went out to eat, and there was this little shop, and I walked in, and there was this sword, and I thought, I need a sword to decorate my garage, and so I bought it. The other sword I have is a wooden sword. It's a boken, and it's made out of hardwood, and it has actually been used. I took some sword classes. I got it when I was goofing around with Aikido, and my understanding is that when feudal Japan banned all weapons in the hands of the peasants began to develop these different kind of martial arts where they could do unarmed combat. And the theory behind some of the Aikido stuff is if you've got a sword and I can manipulate your hands and wrists and cut you with your own sword, that's the basis of some of the wrist locks in Aikido. So I had this sword for years to practice wrist locks. And I've got a reputation as a wrist lock guy. And so that's why I've got this little wooden sword. Well, Gunner wanted to fight the punching bag with the wooden sword. And I don't know. I just felt like that was inappropriate for him to use that sword. Now I've got a Kydex sword or a polypropylene sword that we use as a prop in some of the skits, but it's full size. Well, I went and got it, and he was very upset that it didn't have a holster. He wanted this thing to have a sheath. You got to pull your sword out of a sheath. And so he was walking around my garage in a hoodie with this sword stuck through the front pocket. And it's this huge, long, full-size sword in this little bitty person. And it was kind of funny. Well, I remembered that, hey, we're closing the ropes course. And we've got that little bitty short sword that we used to ring the bell. So I drive over to the ropes course and get the thing. And then I made him a sheath for it. Basically, it's a ring sheath. You have a strap and this ring attached to it, and then you just kind of slide it in like you see in some of the pirate movies. And it's a ninja sword, but he's got this little ring holder. And so I'm getting ready to send this thing to my grandson. So I call their mother, call Lonnie Beth, and said, look, I'm going to send Gunner this little sword. He's been wanting to play with my ninja sword, and I've got one that's just his size, and I'm going to send it to him. My problem is Rowan. Is Sissy Bear going to be upset if she doesn't get a sword in the mail? I mean, do I need to go out and I'll go buy her a sword too if she needs a sword to make her happy? And she said, no, Dad, just send her some lip gloss and she'll be fine. And my head nearly exploded. What kind of Mickey Mouse parenting is going on in Dalton, Georgia, when a granddaughter of mine would prefer lip gloss instead of a sword? Her mother, Lonnie Elizabeth Jones, had an array of weapons. She had wooden stakes. She had a custom cut Bowie knife. She had a shotgun that I'd made her out of wood. At one of Gunner's birthday parties, they suspended a pinata, and he comes out of his bedroom with this full-size wooden Bowie knife that I'd made Lonnie Beth when she was in her Buffy the Vampire Slayer mode. And now I've got a granddaughter who'd rather have lip gloss than a sword. And then I had to check myself at the door. I remember giving some advice to my big brother, and this was before my brother had children. He was hunting at a place in South Alabama, hunting in the middle of this large green field. And what they'd done, they'd put some hay bales, some round hay bales in a circle and made what they call the hay fort. And you walk in there before daylight or walk in there just before dark and sit down in that hay, and you'd be completely surrounded. You could move, you could wiggle. Nobody could see you. The deer couldn't see you. And the deer would walk out and you could shoot deer from the hay fort. Well, the girls, the two little girls who lived there and probably below the age of 12, I don't know the exact details, they decided that they'd seen Mr. Gerald there enough that they wanted to go hunting with him sometime. And their dad didn't really hunt and didn't really take them hunting. And so Gerald's a guest on this property, and they're like, hey, would you take the girls out with you one morning? And so he's going to let them go out to try to learn to hunt or try to shoot some deer. And I gave him this advice. I said, look, what you need to do is you need to buy some snacks and you need to take a thermos of hot chocolate. Because the experience for these girls, the idea of we're sitting here in the dark and in the cold and it's going to get daylight, they're going to expect the deer to show up by appointment. And they're probably going to be good for 30 minutes. But as their resolve begins to wane and their attention begins to wander, and you go, hey, I've got hot chocolate. It becomes a pretty interesting experience. When you are involved with small children, and maybe even talking about your spouses, I've told people for years that you're either hunting or taking your children hunting, but you're not doing both. You're either fishing or taking your children fishing, but you're not doing both. And if you get wrapped up in your agenda that this is what you have to want from me, and if what I want for you is not really what you want, then one of us is going to be disappointed. And parents get frustrated with experiences with children because we build it up in our minds. How many times have you complained that you bought your kid something and they played with the box more than they did the thing that came in the box? Well, that's the whole point. If little Miss Rowan is happy with lip gloss, I'll have it brought in a pumper truck, or I'll have ninjas jump out of airplanes and bring it to her. But if lip gloss makes her happy, lip gloss is what she'll get. Now, obviously, I'm talking about what kids want, and I'm not talking about making a differentiation between things that they need. This is just about gift giving or experiencing. Lonnie Beth has never hunted with me other than frogs. She likes to hunt frogs, but she's been in the deer woods lots of times with, hey, Dad, let's go look for deer. Dad, let's go watch deer. I remember Kerry Richardson had a place where he could predict that the deer were coming out in the afternoons. And so Lonnie Beth and I went over there, and we actually just laid down in a shallow ditch. She's wearing one of my big camouflage jackets, and I've got her in a camouflage mask. And I can hear the deer moving, coming through the kudzu. And she's can't hear them, but she's was really, really good in the woods. And so she laid down and went to sleep. And just as it got dark, the deer came out into the field, and I nudged her and I said, there's deer. And she raised up and she said, I can't see them. I said, they're right there. And of course, her eyes were adjusting to the dark and having been asleep, and I can't see them. Well, she popped her hand out of her jacket. She popped her hand out of her jacket to scratch her nose. The deer saw the movement. The tails flew up in the air, and she jumped up and yelled, I see him! I see him! And of course, that scared everything in the world out of the field. Well, I call that a successful hunt. Because she wasn't interested in shooting a deer or me shooting a deer. She was interested in seeing a deer. She went to sleep in a stand off the ground. I belayed her with a rope into this little stand I'd put up. It had a mesh bottom, and she got bored and tired, and she curled up on the bottom of this stand. That's how little she was, and went to sleep on it, only to open her eyes and look down through the stand and find a fox below her tree, digging and barking at something, and it woke her up. She'd never shot a deer. She'd never picked a rifle up and pointed one at a deer. But she'd been in the woods with me when we saw a fox, and she's close as you'll get to a wild fox at the distance she was. And it wasn't about hunting. It was about being in the woods with her. Last summer, I got to take my 84-year-old dad and my 4-year-old grandson fishing. and I didn't catch any fish. I really didn't fish much. I was involved keeping people out of the water and getting their fish on the land. And it was one of those things where the experience was about being with them and letting them enjoy what they did. I guess at some point you have to teach them the rules of Monopoly or Slapjack or whatever it is that you're playing. But there's benefit in just playing. It doesn't have to be according to the rules. Watch the Lego movie where the Lego city is built, and it has to be just so because the dad has built this thing, and it's not something you play with, it's something you look at. Well, no, it's something you play with. And experiences are about what the person is looking to get out of it, not what you're hoping they get out of it. I remember when Lonnie Beth was little bitty. I've got pictures of her climbing over at Sand Rock in a teddy bear helmet. And she learned pretty quick that she enjoyed swinging better than climbing, and she'd get up off the ground and move off route and say, Dad, can I let go and swing? And I wasn't trying to turn her into the next Alex Honnold or anything. So yeah, if that's what you like to do, swing around. Because it wasn't about me. It was about me being with her. And I know this sounds just like love languages. If you are saying I love you to your spouse, but they don't hear it on that frequency, if your spouse's love language is gifts, but you're trying to do acts of service, the love languages are gifts, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and physical touch. Well, if I like to say I love you with gifts, but you prefer that I do things for you, maintenance on your car, help you do something around the house, help you with one of your projects, do something for you that you can't, carry the trash out, do the dishes, cook dinner. If I'm lavishing you with gifts, but I'm not doing anything for you, you haven't heard the message I love you. In fact, you're hearing I don't love you because you don't know me well enough to know how to say it. When we give people gifts, or we give them the gift of our time, or we give them the gift of an activity, or we give them the gift of just being with them. It's not about me and it's not about you. It's about us. It's about what we did and it's about what we shared. And when I do these things, and you're not hunting, you're taking your kids hunting. And there's a big difference. You're not fishing, you're taking your kids fishing. You're not playing Monopoly, you're playing with your kids. And it's not what I want, it's what you want and not what I want you to want.